What did the weird kid do to earn that reputation? He thought he was a robot. Often you'd find him in the halls alone talking to electronics about destroying the human race or having a conversation with a locker. Could this be Mark Zuck's origin story? Mark's a lizard though. Depending on the version. He could be an android lizard transferred to being a human. He brought a live lobster to a middle school dance and let it go on the dance floor during the dance. Wasn't even a question of who would have done this. It was Nate. Nate did it. Why are so many of these weird kid stories about a Nate? Maybe it's the same Nate that became so infamous he was burned into dozens of people's memories simultaneously. Well, better Nate than Lever. Goddammit. Do a countdown to his farts like they were a fucking moon launch. Of all the things I thought I would find in this thread, inspiration wasn't one of them. I laughed out loud at this. Same. Very loud. I counted down first. Set his arm on fire on a school trip to France. Sprayed his arm with deodorant for about a whole minute before getting someone to light it. It wouldn't go out until he used the tap in the bathroom to douse it with water. He ended up with blisters and permanent scarring. So the school trip ends and we go back to school the week after. All of a sudden me and 4 other kids get pulled into a classroom to be questioned by police and the head teacher. He basically told his mum that we did it to him. Obviously this did not stick, as we all had the same story. If I had Facebook I would look him up, see how life is for him nowadays. Edit. Forgot to say deodorant is what he used. Fuck people like that. A classmate in elementary broke his arm doing dumb shit and tried to frame us for it because he was embarrassed. He pulled some shit like that later in school life too. And you just know he's been pulling shit like that at every place he's ever worked at. What a tosser. He had a notoriety for shitting his pants at least once a day and was super casual about it. I remember I was behind him in the hall one day when I saw a massive turd plop out of his short legs. He looked back at it and just kept on strutting. He was at a high level of not giving a fuck. Damn, you usually don't get to that point until you're old. Maybe he's not giving a fuck because he's too busy giving a shit. I needed this today. Collected earthworms when it rained, in the pouch of his hoodie, and then laid them out in the schoolyard, spelling his own name. He cried when he saw that it had been scraped from the pavement the next day. By that time he was around 13. Predictably, we started calling him Worm Kid. He got expelled around a year later for throwing a fistful of earth at a teacher. Edit. To elaborate on him having to leave the school. This act of dirt tossing happened inside of a classroom at close proximity when he'd been called to the blackboard during a Latin lesson. I'm from Europe. The teacher completely lost her shit. The moist soil was all in her hair, and she later said a couple of live beetles and little pebbles or bone splinters were also found in that mix, though I can't say whether that's true. He got expelled around a year later for throwing a fistful of earth at a teacher. Earthbender. Cut himself in class, waited for the blood to congeal a bit then ate it. Just writing that made me gag. Years later he got arrested for stabbing someone. Not gonna lie. I've done this but I didn't wait for it to congeal and I didn't do it in front of anybody. I think it's quite a primal instinct to lick cuts, cleaning the blood off in a primal way maybe? This dude would go so far as to play with the congealed blood, squishing it with his fingers like it was a small bit of slime or something. Super weird vibes from him. He also had a habit of stalking girls, me for 6 months, and would write them poems which got pretty graphic. He would jerk off everywhere and be caught. Like all the time. In class, on the football field, in the Tuba Room. You name it. He also claimed with all seriousness to everybody that he was dating the most popular girl at our school. She was in a long-term relationship with another one of the popular kids, so everyone knew he was full of shit, but he stuck to his guns. That's all well and good, but there was a whole room at school dedicated to tubas. My middle school had one of those. The band locker room was divided into 2 rooms, with the smaller instrument lockers wrapping around a larger room that just had shelves for the tubas or baritones. It was just a big room with a single locking door instead of a bunch of lockers. Finger themselves during class, then brought a cake the next day to apologize. What kind of cake? Cream pie. Damn you. Took a bite of a urinal cake because he was curious. Charlie? Dude would wear a stormtrooper costume and taped an old flip-up phone to his arm and pretend to talk through it. This was in high school. He was particularly odd because he was like a born genius, so he'd often get bored in class and get up to some weird shit. Now this is a lad I'd like to hear some more stories about. He would put on sunglasses and stare at girls' chests. It was obvious. Peep and creep. I would postulate better than my weird kid. Had a huge crush on the algebra teacher. Normal enough. Masturbating during a quiz? Not so much. Raised his hand, and when the teacher called on him to answer his question, he started singing Fresh Shark. This made me laugh way too much. Glad it wasn't just me.